Hello and welcome to BYJU'S IAS. Let's take up the analysis of today's The Hindu newspaper by looking at a column from page number 6. In this column, the writer talks about how artificial intelligence is a transformative technology while highlighting the risks associated with it. See, artificial intelligence is said to be the main engine that is powering the fourth stage of the industrial revolution. This emerging critical technology has several transformative advantages and at the same time has a major downside risk to it. The writer compares artificial intelligence with the invention of electricity while talking about its transformative impact. Because when electricity was discovered and when it was widely adopted, it had a radical impact on the global economy and as well as on our day to day existence. The widespread adoption of electricity radically transformed every sector of the economy, including agriculture, manufacturing, and services. And it also radically altered virtually every aspect of our existence. In this regard, the writer says that artificial intelligence is somewhat similar to electricity as far as its transformative impact is concerned. See, artificial intelligence is not just a futuristic technology, but it has already embedded itself into our day to day lives. Be it the customized recommendations that we get on our phones and websites, or be it GPS based navigation, or be it the predictive text that completes our sentences when we try to send an email or a message, they are all driven by artificial intelligence based smart algorithms. AI engines and AI applications have already been adopted in almost every sector of the economy, and by harnessing big data, it is driving automation in the economy. These smart algorithms have already started to transform every sector of the industry, and it has been contributing to increase crop yields, raise business productivity, improve access to credit and finance, and even for improved medical diagnosis and medical treatment. These smart algorithms are basically fed on data that is user data, and day by day, these algorithms are designed to become smarter as they are exposed to more and more volumes of data. So, AI has enabled such data based industrial automation, and this combined with other emerging and critical technologies such as robotics, neural networks, machine learning, 5G networks, Internet of Things, etc. They are clearly positioned to transform the global economy and drive the fourth stage of the industrial revolution. AI is not just seen to be transforming businesses, but it is also seen to be having a huge socio-economic impact by helping us eradicate hunger, poverty, and disease. Artificial intelligence also presents numerous opportunities to mitigate climate change, to improve the educational system, and also to lead us towards new remarkable scientific discoveries. Because today, in almost every sector of the economy, AI is becoming omnipresent. And from pharmaceuticals to agriculture, and from space research to defense applications, and even from banking to education, in all the sectors, AI has already gained a omnipotent presence. And it has been estimated that by 2030, the AI driven industry could touch almost $15 trillion. This would amount to nearly 14% of the global GDP being dependent on artificial intelligence based technology, with the added potential to improve our socio-economic indicators as well. Because see, technology has always been a great enabler to reduce inequalities in the society, and AI based applications is expected to have an impact on the progress that we are making towards the sustainable development goals as well. It has been estimated that artificial intelligence will enable the world to achieve around 79% of the SDG targets of the United Nations. But at the same time, it also represents a huge downside risk because just like any other technology, even AI is prone to misuse. And the associated risks of AI could end up widening the socio-economic divide in the society. This is estimated to hinder our achievement of sustainable development goals, and AI could negatively affect the achievement of around 35% of the SDG targets. This would be a direct result of the aggravation of socio-economic divide and inequalities by artificial intelligence based technologies. And AI not only has the potential to further increase the existing divides, but it could also create new problems and challenges, which further increases the downside risks that are associated with AI. The faster and wider adoption of AI could also lead to several environmental problems as well, because artificial intelligence requires enormous computational capabilities, thus requiring the establishment of large data centers which consume enormous quantities of power, thereby increasing our carbon footprint. So the writer tries to illustrate the various risks associated with AI by taking suitable examples. First and foremost, the wider adoption of AI could further increase the digital exclusion in the society. And this rise in digital exclusion could be seen both within a country and as well as amongst countries. Because AI is a high end technology requiring expensive resources, and not every individual or every government or every company can afford these expensive technologies. Thus, the failure to adopt AI could become a disadvantage, and the weaker and the vulnerable sections in the society, and as well as the weaker underdeveloped nations, could lose out, thereby increasing the digital exclusion in the society and the world. Then, since AI promotes automation, several low income jobs that are routine and even several manual tasks could be easily replaced by automated machines and automated programs. Across agriculture, manufacturing, and services, several low income jobs could be replaced, and especially those involved in routine work and manual work could lose out with the rise of autonomous smart machines. This significant loss of jobs will drive up unemployment, and unless people upskill themselves, they will lose out to AI driven machines and programs, thereby further increasing income inequalities in the society. Next is the threat posed by AI to individuals' privacy and data security. Both private firms and governments, which would be adopting AI driven technologies, could be attracted to the opportunity of violating the individual's privacy and data security for their own selfish reasons. Large private corporations, especially technology and social media companies, such as the big four of the big tech, which includes Google, Amazon, Apple, and Facebook, they are already sitting on massive quantities of user data, which they are looking to monetize. And such monetization of data in the name of customized services and targeted advertisements could have a disastrous impact on the user's privacy and data security. The bigger threat will emerge when such sensitive user data is misused for the purpose of social engineering in order to alter the behavior and the choices of the customer. A classic example for this would be the scandal involving Cambridge Analytica and Facebook. This political consultancy firm made use of Facebook user data to send out targeted political advertisements with the intention of carrying out social engineering in order to modify their voting and electoral behavior and choices, in order to push the targeted individuals to make certain choices which they would have never made themselves in the first place. Today, algorithms are so sophisticated that they are able to predict the next action of the user based on the analysis of their private data. It's very much possible to make use of such user data to nudge the individual discreetly to alter his behavior and choices. And this has far reaching implications for the economy, for the society, and as well as for the security of a democratic nation. Then authoritative governments and law enforcement and intelligence agencies would also be tempted to make use of AI driven security applications such as facial recognition softwares and other such intrusive AI driven applications. And it would especially enable authoritative governments to breach individuals' privacy and fundamental rights in the name of protecting the country's national security. So, in the name of security and law enforcement, governments, especially authoritative governments, could misuse AI platforms to target individuals' privacy and data security, even at the cost of violating their fundamental rights. This, in turn, would allow the authoritative governments to target any dissent and opposition and brand any activity that is critical of the government as anti national activity. Then, another major risk associated with AI platforms is that it could further perpetuate the existing biases and prejudices in the society. For example, look at the Twitter chatbot that was developed by Microsoft and how it started posting racist content based on what the AI algorithm was learning from the existing data, which already reflected the biases and the prejudices of the society. So, as a result, the existing biases and prejudices on the lines of religion, language, sex, and even race and ethnicity could be further aggravated by AI platforms because at the end of the day, these algorithms are learning from the data that already exists, which is basically a reflection of the societal and human biases and prejudices. So, such AI driven applications could end up discriminating on religious lines, linguistic lines, on the lines of gender, race, and ethnicity, and thus lead to a further increase in societal divide. For example, a facial recognition software could teach itself to target people of a certain religion based on what it has learned from existing biases and prejudices. Similarly, a AI-driven recruitment software could discriminate against women based on its learning that the current workforce is largely dominated by men. So the existing biases and prejudices will feed into the AI algorithms as well, thereby leading to a further increase in social and economic divide. Then upon this, we have the risk posed by autonomous weapons and their usage in combat and in conflicts raises the much larger ethical question as to where to draw the line when it comes to these risks associated with AI platforms. This is where the writer gives a call for promoting responsible AI by putting in place an ethical code of conduct and by promoting a culture of ethics when it comes to the adoption of artificial intelligence. So the writer talks about the need for a code of ethics for AI that could not only protect the individual's privacy and data security, but also provide for greater transparency and accountability in the system. The code of ethics should be able to govern the environmental risks associated with AI and at the same time focus on the safety and security aspects by creating a non-discriminatory platform that respects the existing diversity in the society and provides for a fair system which is inclusive, transparent, and accountable with the constant oversight of human intervention and human agency. So, when it comes to the adoption of artificial intelligence, the conflict is between AI promotion and AI governance and regulation. So, to strike a balance between these conflicting objectives, what we need is an ethical code. And the writer is asking the governments and the corporations to take inspiration from certain existing frameworks that are being put in place. For example, the UN Secretary General has come out with a roadmap on digital cooperation, which promotes a multi stakeholder global cooperation effort to regulate the various risks that are associated with AI adoption. Then, on similar lines, UNESCO has recently come out with a draft recommendation to set a global standard for ethics of artificial intelligence. Then, in India, the Niti Aayog has come out with a strategy known as Responsible AI for All, and such ethical frameworks and guidelines will have to be adopted by the governments and large private corporations in order to promote the responsible usage of artificial intelligence. Now let's take up a column from page number 7, which evaluates the need for India to urgently invest in public health. See, the COVID-19 pandemic has been a learning lesson for India because the government and even the public, they have learned the importance of evidence-based, science-based medicine, which has helped India to overcome the much larger impact of the pandemic. Thanks to India's ethical, evidence-based and science-based medical system, the frontline healthcare workers have been able to do a phenomenal job and they have played a critical role in containing the spread of the pandemic and as well as in limiting its damage on the country. But the writers point out that this relative success of India against the COVID-19 pandemic is largely because of its world-class healthcare system and not because of its public healthcare system. The writers are calling upon the government and the citizens to understand the difference between healthcare and public health. See, healthcare is just a transactional service of caregiving provided by the healthcare workers to a sick patient. So basically, when you fall sick and when you go to a hospital seeking medical attention, the medical service and the medical care that you receive is what refers to healthcare. Such healthcare could be availed by the citizens both in private hospitals and as well as in government hospitals. According to the writers, this is the narrow domain of healthcare, and India's relative success against the pandemic should be attributed to its healthcare system and not to the public health system. The writers do acknowledge that India's healthcare system does have many problems because the government hospitals are not well equipped and well funded, and they not only lack the essential infrastructure, but they may also fail to reach out to several remote areas of the country. Then, on the other hand, healthcare in private hospitals is very expensive and it directly increases the out of pocket expenditure, thereby placing an enormous burden on the patients. But despite these flaws, India is said to have a decent healthcare system, and thanks to its belief in ethical, evidence based, and science based medicine, the country has relatively been able to overcome the full impact of the pandemic. But however, it is for the government to realize the significance of public health because public health entails a much larger responsibility, and especially with regard to disease control and disease prevention, investments in public health is absolutely critical. Because the public health system performs many other tasks and roles as compared to the healthcare system. The healthcare system is merely providing the services, the transactional services to the patients. That is, the required medical attention and care is being provided by trained professionals. And this happens to be the only task of the healthcare system. Whereas public health has a much larger responsibility and it plays a key role in disease prevention and control, especially in preventing and controlling the spread of contagious infectious diseases. For both non-communicable and communicable diseases, public health system is crucial for preventing the diseases and controlling them by maintaining constant surveillance and by collecting real-time data through data collection. Public health institutions, they have the jurisdiction and the powers and the mandate to collect effective and reliable data which helps in tracking the spread of the disease, and accordingly it is responsible for taking countermeasures in order to contain the spread of the disease. For example, if you look at AIDS and polio, India's success against these diseases was mainly because the public health system was able to function effectively, and through proactive disease prevention and control measures and through effective and reliable data collection, India was able to keep track of the spread of the disease, eventually resulting in the elimination of polio and the containment of HIV/AIDS. Next, the public health system is also responsible for implementing a social vaccine in order to contain the spread of contagious infectious diseases. Because while dealing with a contagious infectious disease, we need two types of interventions. One is a pharmacological intervention and the other is a non-pharmacological intervention. Under pharmacological intervention, you promote the development, distribution, and administration of vaccines and provide for appropriate medical care and medical treatment. But under non-pharmacological intervention, you take up several behavioral practices such as promoting the usage of facial masks, promoting hand hygiene and sanitation, encouraging physical distancing or social distancing, and such behavioral changes will have to be self-motivated amongst the people, and it can be achieved only through greater awareness and education. This is where the public health system steps in, and through a well-designed intervention, it can promote greater awareness and public education, which instills behavioral changes in the society. We refer to these non-pharmacological interventions as a social vaccine, and it is crucial in containing the spread of a disease. India successfully used such a social vaccine in its fight against AIDS and polio, and this is where the public health system plays a critical role. Then, with regard to every infectious disease, there are certain social and environmental determinants which determine the course and the spread of the disease. For example, social determinants such as overcrowding, the lack of hygiene and sanitation etiquette, the extent of urban-rural divide, and the extent of economic activities in a region, all these are social factors or social determinants which determine the extent to which a disease can spread within a population. Similarly, there are several environmental determinants which also play a role in influencing the spread of the disease. And the public health system is responsible for tackling these social and environmental determinants in order to effectively control the spread of the disease. Because the public health system has the jurisdiction and the powers to enforce laws in our homes, in our offices, and as well as in crowded public settings. And it also has the jurisdiction to monitor the food and water distribution chains. And by enforcing regulations in these domains, it can help in containing the spread of a disease. Because through such intervention, the public health system can gain control over the social and environmental determinants and thus play a key role in containing or limiting the spread of a disease. That's the reason why the writers are calling upon the government to urgently invest in public health, because for effective disease prevention and control, what we need is a robust public health system and not just healthcare alone. Now let's take up another column from page number 7, which evaluates the potential in the India-US trading relationship. See, the writer points out that India enjoys bipartisan support in the United States. And as far as the trading relationship is concerned, it doesn't matter whether it's the Republican Party in power or the Democrat Party in power, because the United States has clearly recognized India as a key trading partner, and the trading relationship receives a lot of priority from the US. As a result of this bipartisan support, the trading volume between India and US stood at a massive $146 billion in 2019. In the 5 years preceding 2019, the India-US trade volume was growing at a compounded rate of 7.7% every year. Now, both the countries have laid out an ambitious target to take up the trading volume to $500 billion in the coming years. And to achieve this ambitious target, the trading volume should grow at a compounded rate of 11.9% every year. And the writer says that this ambitious target is very much achievable, provided if the two countries focus on 7 priority areas. According to him, the first area of focus should be pandemic collaboration. Because see, India has already emerged as the hub for vaccine development and production. And this is where the United States can complement India's resources and help out the Indian companies through efficient supply chain logistics. This growing profile of India as the pharmacy of the world and as the vaccine hub of the world should be used by India to build confidence about its IP laws in the United States. Because India's intellectual property regime has often been a source of controversy in the India-US trading relationship. But the growing convergence between India and US and the emergence of India as the vaccine hub should help India to strengthen its image about its IP laws. And both the countries could further boost cooperation between their pharmaceutical companies and biotech firms by reviving the India-US health dialogue. The writer even suggests that the two countries can mutually recognize their standards with regard to drugs and clinical trials, and as well as with regard to approvals of drugs and vaccines, so that the market access could be increased for their pharma and biotech sectors. Then next, the writer talks about the need to strengthen the macro trade architecture between the two countries. According to him, this could be done by reviving the US-India Trade Policy Forum in order to conduct broad trade negotiations that might lead to the signing of a free trade agreement between India and US. Such trade negotiations and an eventual FTA would also improve market access to the companies of both the countries, and India could even use the platform to seek the United States to restore its GSP tag, or the generalized system of preferences. See, under the GSP mechanism, the United States provides preferential trade treatment or preferential tariffs to certain developing countries for certain select products in order to help these developing countries boost their exports into the United States. Earlier, India was enjoying the GSP tag, and several Indian products, they enjoyed preferential treatment or preferential tariff under the GSP system. But because of the trade war that was unleashed by the previous Trump administration, India's GSP tag was withdrawn by the US, and it has significantly affected several Indian exports into the US. So by seeking a restoration of the GSP tag, India could boost its exports to the US by obtaining preferential treatment for certain category of products. Then third, India and US will have to work together to promote the free movement of professionals and labor between the two countries. Such enhanced mobility for professionals will particularly help India because its core strength lies in the services industry, especially in IT, and it could even help other service-based industries such as banking, finance, education, legal services, etc. Currently, the immigration laws in the United States are very strict, and the restrictions on the issuance of H-1B visa has directly affected Indian professionals and their mobility to the United States. Along with this, India and US need to update the 2011 MOU they had signed on labor cooperation by keeping in mind the revised labor laws of India. India's outdated labor laws was always a point of contention for the United States, and now that India's labor laws have been updated and brought in line with the Western standards of labor rights and labor laws, these changes will have to be taken into account to update the labor cooperation between the two sides, which will further improve the mobility and the free movement of professionals and workers. Then India and US could also consider the signing of a totalization agreement to guarantee a social security net for the professionals and the workers. Then four, there is a need to further enhance the participation of Indian private firms in the defense relationship of the two countries. And they could even consider holding a defense dialogue involving government representatives, representatives of the armed forces, and as well as the private defense manufacturers. Such enhanced defense cooperation will lead to transfer of technology from the US to India, and India's public sector along with India's private sector can tie up with American defense firms to take up joint development and co-production of critical defense technologies and defense equipment. Then even the small and medium enterprises deserve greater attention from the two governments, and they could jointly host a forum of CEOs representing small and medium enterprises in order to further boost their mutual exports. Then another important area of cooperation would be clean energy and climate change, because both in India and the US, there is enhanced focus on renewable forms of energy, and both the governments would do well to complete the programs and the initiatives that were launched under the India-US Strategic Energy Partnership. Then finally, both the governments will have to take into account the growing adoption of digital economy, and they will have to collaborate together in several areas of emerging and critical technologies such as artificial intelligence, robotics, machine learning, etc. And particularly in the field of rollout of 5G technology, the US can assist India, leading to greater adoption of digital economy and further integration of their digital economies. This should also provide an opportunity for India to defend its conservative intellectual property laws, which are not in line with the Western standards. See, currently, the US Trade Representative has placed India on the priority watch list because according to the US, Indian IP laws are not according to global standards. This is a long-standing debate between the developed countries and the developing countries, and it would be unfair of the developed countries to expect developing countries like India to adopt higher standards with regard to their intellectual property regime. So through enhanced cooperation, especially in the field of emerging and critical technologies, India could further clarify its position on its IP laws. And through such focused collaboration in these 7 priority areas, India and US can hope to build a stronger trading and economic relationship, which would have the potential to achieve this ambitious target. Next, on page number 10, we have an article that provides us an important update with regard to the quadrilateral grouping. See, recently, while we covered the Quad grouping in detail, we spoke about the vaccine initiative that was announced by the Quad leaders during the Quad summit. So this article provides us more details on this vaccine initiative, and the Quad members have stated that they are going to focus on the Indo-Pacific region with regard to COVID-19 vaccine distribution, with special attention being paid to the Southeast Asian countries. Under this initiative, the Quad members are going to take up different responsibilities. And India being the hub for vaccine production, India would be given the task to produce the COVID-19 vaccines with technology being sourced from the US. And while Japan would organize the finances, Australia would deploy its distribution and logistics network in the Indo-Pacific region to effectively distribute cheap and affordable vaccines to Southeast Asian countries. Now let's take up a couple of mains practice questions. The first question: without adequate safeguards, AI can widen social and economic schisms, leading to discriminatory outcomes. In the light of this statement, discuss the need for AI ethics. The second question: only a robust public health system and not healthcare alone can lead to disease prevention and control. Analyze. Kindly write an answer to these questions and post your answers in the comment section below. So this concludes our discussion for today. Thanks for watching.